Dear colleagues and friends, welcome to Prelude, an interview series about opera produced by Atelier for educational purposes. The current episode is supported by the 360 of opera, online blog and community, and its founder, Miss Eugenia Fortezza, participates in today's episode as a guest interviewer. Our guest for today is one of the most talented and versatile young artists of the classical music scene, or, according to the Financial Times, an artist who simply has everything. South African soprano Miss GOLDA SCHULTZ. Welcome, GOLDA.
Hi, GOLDA. Welcome, GOLDA.
Hi, everybody.
GOLDA, you are muted, I'm afraid. I see your microphone.
I just switched myself off. I switched the mute off. Can you hear me now, everybody?
Yes. Yes.
Hi, everyone. Sorry. I didn't want to interrupt the conversation.
To have you here.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Thank you so much for taking time out to spend time with me, and I'm looking forward to talking with you guys.
Hi, GOLDA. Hi, Eugenia. Hi, Sammy Boy.
Hello.
We are...
Oh, I'm sorry. Maybe there's a delay.
Yeah.
We are excited. We are very happy to have you here, GOLDA. And very grateful to Sammy Boy that due to his friendship with you, he managed to... There's a delay. There's a delay from my side. Or everybody. Is it only me? Okay, I'll try to turn off my earphones, maybe. We apologize for this.
It happens. Technology is overloaded.
Yeah.
Is it any better?
Yeah, I think you can
go.
Can
you hear us now?
Yeah, you can go now.
Is it better now?
It's a little bit better, yes.
Okay. I will do my best to fix it more as we speak. As long as you can hear me. Is it okay? For sure? Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. So, GOLDA, we will travel a little back in time. When you were a child in South Africa, you were born in Cape Town, but grew up in Bloemfontein, if I say it well.
That's really good.
Which was a quite, I remember from our talk, you said it was a quite beautiful and multicultural place. And I would like you to speak for your childhood year there with your family who loved music and theater, your parents, and how did this environment eventually influence you to study journalism and leave home to go become a journalist?
So I grew up in Cape Town, and my mom's family's always been very interested in music. A lot of my mother's brothers have sung in choirs. So my parents come from very big families. My mom is the oldest of 9. My dad is the middle of 7 children. And so there was always a lot of music and a lot of loud noises in my childhood when we lived in Cape Town. And then we moved to Mahikeng, which is in the north of South Africa on the border of Botswana. And my parents and I moved there. And before we moved there, my mother had already spoken to a cousin of hers who was a music teacher about my interest and what they called my aptitude for music when I was little, because my mom's cousin had seen me playing on her piano in her house, and I was tinkering on the piano, and she thought that was quite an interesting thing that I was doing. And then my mom got the idea to send me to violin lessons, and violin lessons when we moved to Mahikeng turned into recorder lessons, piano lessons, theory lessons, and just a lot of music always happening in the background, and joining a school choir. So I've always been involved in music as sort of an extracurricular thing and not a main part of my life. So when I was a child, there wasn't really talk about being a musician in terms of a classical musician. You knew about musicians like pop stars, and you knew about singers like Miriam Makeba, Yvonne Chaka Chaka. Those are the people I was listening to, whose music I was listening to as a child. Yvonne Chaka Chaka, Vicky Sampson. These are all like great legendary South African singers, Brenda Fassie, all of these people. That was the music I was listening to, as well as old Motown, The Temptations. My mom was playing that, and lots of Motown was playing in the house. And then on top of that, my dad was listening to classical music, Haydn symphonies, Beethoven symphonies, as well as Led Zeppelin, Chicago, the Eagles. There was so much. If I really have to, when people always ask me what's my musical interest, it's very difficult to say because I've listened to so much and I find so much music interesting. So music was always there, but it wasn't the primary focus. And the way journalism came is because I've always liked people's stories, and I've always been interested in other people. I've loved reading stories. I loved writing stories as a child. I used to do a lot of creative writing. And so from that, because that was always happening in school, I think when you're a child, you kind of focus on, well, if that's what you're studying at school, then that should be where you go and make a career. So music was always a side hustle,
Cool.
not the main aim of my game.
Yeah.
But then I got to, my final years of high school, and I was really interested in classical music, especially violin, because then I was playing in orchestras. And then I started realizing, you could be an orchestra musician and you could actually have work. And so I wanted to then study music. And what was very interesting, my dad, it was just at the beginning of the new democracy of South Africa. And I remember my dad was a very active member of the ANC party, and he was noticing how a lot of the government-funded orchestras, government-funded music programs were being, set aside by the new government. Because in South Africa, during apartheid, they kind of ran on the same principle for classical music, that it was state-funded, the same way that Germany does. So during apartheid, South Africa had a national radio orchestra. Every major city had their own symphony orchestra. Most major cities have a built opera house that exists in the city. Cape Town has an opera house. Bloemfontein had an opera house. Pretoria has an opera house. Durban has an opera house. Sunny boy, tell me how to say Port Elizabeth again, because I've forgotten.
That's Port Elizabeth. You're right.
That's not Port Elizabeth anymore. The name has changed.
I don't
the
know the new name. Sorry.
Gqeberha.
I don't know the new one. Sorry.
Now you do. So every major city during apartheid was getting state funding to have orchestras, to have opera companies even, but they were all white. They were all white companies. And so when apartheid ended, the ANC-led government said that they needed to remove money from that kind of thinking because we needed to integrate the country more than deal with keeping orchestras up and running. So what's happened after apartheid is that orchestras have now gone into private funding and gone into an NGO sort of system, the way that most other orchestras function in the rest of the world, like America or even the UK to some degree. So my dad saw all of this starting to happen, and for him, it didn't seem like a smart idea for a young person to be wanting to go into an industry that was starting to crumble, as it were. So he then kind of led me down the road of choosing a relatively more secure path. And that was how I ended up in journalism, which wasn't a bad thing to do either, because even though I went to study journalism and I'm a qualified journalist, I still somehow found my way to music with my side hustle of like taking music lessons. And then eventually I've still done the music route. So it's been a very like winding road, but it's all led me to have a very interesting take, I think, on just the importance of classical music, the importance of arts culture, and the importance of in-depth storytelling, because that's what I focused my studies on in journalism, investigative journalism. I kind of approach operas in that same way as an investigative journalist. I want to know why things are the way they are. So that's what I did.
Golda, while you're still a journalism major, can you tell us how did you fall in love with opera, and why did you decide to go and pursue music at the University of Cape Town? And as well, did Cape Town, after all of that, did Cape Town prepare you for Juilliard Music School?
I remember I was at Rhodes University studying a journalism degree in Grahamstown, and I had started taking singing lessons and music lessons at the university. And my singing teacher at the time was this very sweet lady, and I had gone to the singing teacher and said, when she'd asked me what was my interest in singing, I said, well, I love musical theater, so I'd love to sing a little bit of Rodgers and Hammerstein, a little bit of, Sondheim, anything musical theater. And I remember the conversation with her, and she said, well, my dear, I don't teach musical theater, so I only teach classical voice, but that's a good foundation for everything else. And so the sweet lady, Enid Judge was her name. She was a very sweet little old lady. I think it was her final year of teaching. And so she just decided that she was just going to teach me her favorite arias. So the first aria that she gave me was from Le Nozze di Figaro, and it was Cherubino's aria because why would anyone want to start anywhere else than with Voi che sapete? And I remembered, I said to her, so I sing this in English. And she said, oh no, you sing this, the story's in Italian, so you have to sing it in Italian. And I said, but I don't speak Italian. And she's like, well, we're going to have to find a way to do that, but it's sung in Italian. And then I said to her, oh, well, how's the tune go? And then she said, well, you've got to go and do the research, and next week when you come back, we'll go through it. So I went into the library, and I just remembered on the sheet music she had given me, she'd written Voi che sapete from The Marriage of Figaro. And I was like, oh, well, who wrote the song? And I was like, and I went into the library, and I went to the head librarian, and I was like, so I need to find a copy of the CD of the song, Voi che sapete. I just need to know who wrote it, and if it's from this show called Marriage of Figaro. And so the head librarian, she didn't give me a CD. I don't know why she didn't let me listen to a CD, but she made me listen to an LP, a long play record. So if you're not au fait with how records work, you either have to know exactly where the song is so that you can like skip to that groove in the track, or you just have to let the whole thing play. So I didn't know where Voi che sapete came in the show. So I was like, oh, guess I'm going to have to listen to the whole thing. And then I remember the librarian saying, she was like, oh, but Voi che sapete is in the second act. And I said, oh, great. Awesome. So I flipped it, second act starts playing, and I'm just like listening. And the music that's playing is not the music that's on my sheet music. And I was like, okay, maybe it comes later, but I just have to listen. And I started hearing the clarinet solo of the prelude to Por Favor. And then I heard Kirita Kanoa's voice. And I remember being so struck by the beauty and the absolute sheer sadness of what she was going through, even though I did not understand what she was singing about in that moment. But what was so striking is that I was stopped dead in my tracks even to try to understand. I was stopped from everything about what I was listening to was stopping me from even looking at the translation. It was forcing me, not enforcing, but it was drawing me in to just be in that moment with this voice. And that was just such a gift. And from that moment, I fell in love with Kirita Kanoa's voice. And then I was like, and then I remember I went to the librarian and I said, does she sing the Voi que sapete in the show? Because I like how she sings. And it wasn't her, of course, it was Federica von Stade, as well, a brilliant singer. And listening to Lucia Pop do Susanna, these three voices singing together and and then listening to them do the recit, just hearing to this pitter patter of conversation. And I was so amazed. So I think that's where my love of opera started. It was sheer amazement at how they could make me be so still, even though I didn't know what they were talking about, but intrinsically I could feel what they meant. And that was the thing that really started getting me in. And then, of course, the gateway drug singer that makes you then really fall in love with opera has to be Callas. Yes. And then once you discover Callas, then it kind of just explodes your brain in a way that I don't think a lot of other singers, other than maybe Corelli and Leontine Price, are able to do in my imagination. And that kind of discovering Takanoa, discovering Callas, discovering Caballé, those voices, and just the way they even if I tell you that these are some of my favorite singers to listen to, I think it's quite clear to you that they're very distinctly different women. Number one, their interpretation of characters is distinctly different, but there's absolute sheer beauty in everything that they choose to do. And that for me has always been what draws me to opera, is that I'm drawn to these distinct performances that just draw you in and hold you. Yeah. So that's how I became a fan of opera. And then that fandom turned into this need to see if I could do even 10% of that. And just in the search to be 10% as engaging as Callas. And I don't even think I ever reached 10% as engaging. I think I'm 5% as engaging on a good day. And when I'm really struggling, it's 1.5. I'm 1.5% as engaging as Callas. And so in trying to seek to understand how these different women have been able to draw people into stories, that has drawn me into stories. And I went from that and wanting to figure out how to do it, despite having, practically debilitating stage fright at the beginning when I started singing lessons. Had horrible stage fright to the point that I fainted after singing. Cold on the floor. Despite all that fear, the thing that's always kept me going is I'm so fascinated by the sheer mechanism of the human connection that happens when you hear someone sing and they draw you in. And then I went to Cape Town and I found a really great teacher, Virginia Davids, and she helped me find the beginning of my voice and my way. And I think in that, because she helped me solidify who the voice is inside me, I felt more capable and willing to even attempt to go to a school like Juilliard. Because I think going to those kinds of schools like the Guildhall in London, Juilliard, the Royal Academy even in London, or other schools in America as well, when you go at an undergraduate level, I think it's so difficult to sometimes understand who you are as a performer, and to not even a performer, but to know who you are as a person, and that who you are as a person is absolutely 100% the core of who you are as an artist. And I'm really so grateful that in South Africa, I learned that. I learned that it is okay to be different. It is okay to, it is okay to not look the way people expect. It is okay to have mad curly hair. It is okay to wear a head wrap if you want to and still sing a concert on stage. I learned to be okay with my Africanness, with my brownness, with my bigness, I learned to be okay with that in South Africa, because there's something so special about, and Sanebo, you'll attest, when you look at someone from Africa, there's the steady grounding in like knowing who you are. Because especially for the people of color in South Africa, we've fought, and our parents and our grandparents have fought so long and so hard for us to have space, that we take it up because they made space for us. So we will speak loudly, we will sing loudly, we will laugh loudly, we will cry loudly, because we are allowed to. And I think that's something that I carry with me, and I carried with me into Juilliard. So that's how going through Cape Town prepared me to go to America, prepared me for New York. Because Eugenia, you'll know, being in New York, it's a constant bombardment of,
Yes.
and if you don't know who you are, that city will swallow you up and you'll disappear.
Absolutely.
So I think being an African and being a strong South African woman really prepared me to be a woman in New York in that way.
Golda, since you're talking about Professor Davids, I mean, one of the amazing voice teacher, and she's also one of the most important teachers who break the walls for people of color to sing on stage. You know, I just don't want to get into politics, but she's a very iconic lady in South Africa. With my teacher as well, who just passed away, Sidwell Hartman. So when you talk about meeting Professor Davids, I remember at that time, I don't know whether you did university at the same time with the opera studio, because you know what, I want the young singers to understand that you did so much. You did also school and opera studio. Teacher as well, because as well, working with Professor Angelo Gobato, it was a lot of productions for you. You were juggling this side and this side. How did you manage to get through the workload that you had?
I think the way you get through the workload is you kind of don't think about the workload, you just do what's in front of you. But I remember, you know, when I came to Cape Town, I had done my journalism degree, but I hadn't done, you know, music theory, oral training. The music theory I'd finished in high school. My piano training, I also finished in high school. But then when you got to the music college in Cape Town, you know, there was oral training, diction classes. My Virginia sent me to actual German language classes, which weren't at the music school. They were on another part of the campus. So I was traveling between the levels of campus, as well as, you know, in my second year of my studies at UCT, I then got into the opera studio at Cape Town Opera, and then I was doing concert work with Cape Town Opera, singing for sponsors, doing all kinds of gigs for them, as well as freelance gigs that my singing teacher had organized. So you know, Easter is a big time to make money for anybody, because it's that Handel time, it's that oratorio season. You know, Christmas is that oratorio season. So like, you know, I was constantly busy learning music as well, and at the same time consistently feeling like I was behind every one of my classmates because I hadn't done music for 4 years straight. I had done something completely different. So every time that I have come to a new school, you know, it happened at UCT, it happened at Juilliard, I've always felt like I'm the person that's behind the class and that I have to catch up so that I can be where everybody else is. So I've always had this, I don't know if it's an internal need, but I've had this internal clock and fire that's just been pushing me forward to make sure that I stay on level with other people. And what I've only recently found out is that it wasn't that I was always on level with people. It was sometimes that I was pushing myself past what other people were doing, but I just wasn't paying attention because the voice inside my head was going, you're behind, you're behind, you're behind. And I think when you're a young singer, it's good to have that a little bit. just that little bit of drive to just keep you going, so that you stop comparing yourself so much to other people because you're just so busy. What Virginia taught me very early on is like, don't focus on what other people are doing. Everybody's working on their own thing. What you can do, some people can't do. What they can do, you can't do. So work on what you can't do, be glad for what you can do, and don't pay attention to anybody else. That's it.
Yeah.
That is how education works. That is how improvement works. The only reason that you look at other people was something that I learned from Maria Callas. She used to, when she was a young student and she had just started in Greece, she was studying with them. I think it was the teacher Hidalgo, and and they were allowed to sit in on all their classmates' lessons. And she would sit in on every single lesson if she could. If she didn't have another class, she would sit in on someone else's lesson, even if it was the worst student in the class, someone who couldn't sing to save their life, but they were there. And she said the reason she did that is because you can learn something from even the worst. Even if it is learning what not to do, that's learning something. Yeah. And so I took that, I think I took it into my head and I took it to heart, that every opportunity that I had to learn, I couldn't waste. Because I came to opera late. I came to studying opera at the age of 19, 20. I was having to figure out my voice, figure out how to sing with the right resonance, figure out how to, and then also figuring out what repertoire suited me, as well as learning diction, as well as doing all these things that everybody else had sort of been doing a couple of years longer than me. And I had to be figuring it out all the time, just constantly. Any moment was a moment to learn. If there was a free moment, I was in the library listening to music so I could learn repertoire. I remember listening to an album of Nikolai Gedda singing Russian songs just because I wanted to learn legato, the way that he sang with legato.
Yeah.
I wasn't listening to like sopranos just because I liked how they sang. I was listening to every single singer, every type of voice, to learn what they did that made their voice function, so that I could learn how to make my voice function, as well as going to opera studies with Gabato and learning how to act and be in my body, and going to my singing lessons and practicing. I was busy learning from instrumentalists. I remember sitting with, I had a lot of instrumentalist friends.
I remember that.
And I would sit with my pianist friends and I would learn about piano phrasing, and I would listen to how a violinist played and practiced. I was listening to all the wind instruments because I wanted to see if there was anything I could learn from anybody else. And I've always done that. And I still, to this day, still do that, because I don't think this is the one job where you don't stop learning.
Absolutely.
And if you ever do stop learning, then if you stop learning, then I suggest you start teaching, because then clearly you've learned everything and it's now time to pass on the information.
Yes. Yeah.
Very right.
Absolutely,
Right.
Golda. Really, you are just, I'm so proud, first of all, because you are one example that hard work does pay off. Really, I remember when we did our first production together. Don't know if you still remember. I remember very well. We did Don Giovanni. And
no, it wasn't Don Giovanni. It was Rondine. Although you were in the first class. You were in the first cast in Rondine. I was in the second cast. Never mind.
Never
mind.
Never mind. But I admire what you did with Elvira, because I thought you were really fantastic as an Elvira. Really, honestly, even La Rondine was fantastic too. But I remember how hard you fought to sound great in the role. You were like constantly there on time. You were practicing before everybody. This is the whole information that I need that young singers get to hear from you. That you were the first one when the rehearsal started 10. You were there at 5:30.
Yeah, because if you're on time, you're late.
So talking about time as well, remembering everything that has been done a day before.
Yeah,
what was that for you?
I've always had it's very interesting. I have a very acute body sensory memory. So when I write things down, it doesn't really compute for me. I know a lot of people can write into their scores, do this, and I can't. my body has to walk it. So when so what I would be doing is, this is what you don't know, when we were doing that, I would go home every night and put on a CD of Don Giovanni and then play the opera through, and I would just walk my actions. And I would remember where everybody was. And
I thought I was the only one who's doing that. I still that till today.
Same. Yeah. I would remember, I would like set up my living room, and then I would be like, so-and-so's there, so-and-so's there. And then I would start, and it's also a way to like, to start learning how the music flows and the timing, so that you knew when you needed to stretch a moment or hold a moment. And so I was doing that all the time. And then I would come early to a rehearsal because, you know, I would always then sit with my score and then go through what was coming next, so that I would know what I was doing. And then it started happening that because that's how I work, I usually end up knowing everybody's music in the show, which is why when one of our cast members, Musa, I remember when she got sick, she had laryngitis. She had laryngitis for 3 days. And I ended up sitting next to the conductor just singing Donna Anna. Like I was singing Donna Anna while another singer was playing Donna Elvira, while Musa was walking Donna Anna, and I was just singing Donna Anna, and like even the rest of it, because I had learned it so well from doing it in my room. So there's all, you know, the thing that I think is most important about being the performer, and I don't know if anybody really taught me this, but it's something that has become very clear to me that's necessary. If you want to be an opera singer and you want to sing on stage, I'm going to say something that might not be 100% kosher for a lot of people, but you can't love the stage more than you love rehearsal rooms. You have to love being in a rehearsal room more than you love standing on a stage with bright lights shining in your face.
Yes.
Because bright lights shining in your face is 3 hours of your life. And if you're like, and if you really like break an opera down to what your character actually says, it's about an hour of your life. That's how much time you spend in bright light.
Yeah.
The majority of the work is in a room that has usually got no ventilation, no windows, like bad mirrors facing you at all times so you can see how stupid you look when you're walking around, a director telling you that you're not walking right and that, oh, could you not stand like that, and a conductor telling you that your phrasing just isn't what they want, and then other singers also having a lot of insecurity in a room. That's where your work is, and you have to love that space.
Yeah.
Because if you don't love that space, you won't like 90% of this job. Because 90% of this job is a practice room and a rehearsal room. That's it. A coaching room, so it's like your singing teachers, a singing studio, a coaching room, a rehearsal room, and your practice space. Those are the four places where you spend the most time in this job. So you have to make sure that your practice space is somewhere you want to be. You have to know that you want to be in a rehearsal room. The day you stop wanting to be in a rehearsal room is the day you need to tell your agent, or if you don't have an agent, it's the day you need to tell yourself, I need a break so that I can come back to this moment with love and joy in my heart. Because if you don't come back, it's been so interesting, this pandemic, the thing that I've been noticing so much from so many of my colleagues, everybody's been writing how much they miss the rehearsal room. Everybody. So few people have said, oh, I miss standing on stage with those lights and that makeup. Of course, that's fun, but that's not what we miss. We miss playing in a room with other people and arguing about an idea, or, you know, telling a conductor, I'm sure that's what you want, but I can't give it to you. And then smiling and just going like, sorry, I don't sing like that. Or looking at a director and going like, you want me to what? Why? Stand on my head while juggling balls and singing an aria? Okay, I'm going to have to go and think about how to do that. It's about that negotiating and balancing of how things work. That's where the work is. So that's always been the thing that's been the exciting thing for me. And that's been the saving grace, because I've come all the time from, like I said, from the first day I heard Kiri Takano sing, I've come from this place of fascination. and wanting to understand and wanting to know why and how.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know why and how more than I want to know who and where and what, you know?
Yeah.
So, Golda, how exciting was New York for you? You found yourself miles away from home for the first time, and you were at this mythical place, Juilliard. How was Juilliard? How was living in New York?
Oh my gosh. So when I remember finding out about Juilliard, I thought Juilliard was a made up school for movies. I did not think it existed until a friend of mine who played violin told me that she got in. She was like, "Oh, I'm going to the school in New York called Juilliard. You should come." That was how it was. That's how the idea of going to Juilliard was pitched to me. Not like it's the most difficult school in the world to get into, more difficult than Harvard. I was only told that on the day we all got to our first day of school. We're like, "Congratulations, you've gotten into a school that's more difficult to get into than Harvard." And we were like, "Oh, wow, we could all be in Harvard Business School, you guys, and really be making money, but we're making art." So getting into Juilliard in itself was such a crazy thing. And then on top of that, being in New York, where all these great movies had, all the great TV shows, all the great movies have played in New York. And then for me, loving musical theater, knowing that I was going to the place that Broadway just existed for, knowing that I would be this close to Broadway was just a dream. And when I landed there, oh my gosh, I think I was more scared than anything. I was moving to a new country, a new city, and going to school without a single person who knew me there to support me. And I was so afraid. But when I got to the school and our resident administrators met us, they were so kind and so understanding of what we were all going through that you instantly felt calm and okay. But being at that school, knowing that singers like Leontine Price had studied there, Renee Fleming had studied there, knowing that, Viola Davis had studied drama there, and like Laura Linney, so many great actors and so many great dancers and so many great jazz musicians, Wynton Marsalis, like so many great minds of art and culture had come to the school and had actually gone through the exact same thing that we were all going through. There was something very unifying about that, which I really appreciated, which also then helped me not feel so scared, because I was just thought to myself, well, if Leontine Price had to go to this school and had to deal with ear training, well, then I can do it too. And if Renee Fleming had to struggle through, content analysis of musical harmony, then I can do it too. Yeah. Like I'm no better than these people, and they're no better than me. They struggled, so do I, and I'm struggling, and that's okay. And I think knowing that helps you kind of to understand that everybody's journey is a gradual ascent. Yeah. There is no journey that is just 0 to 100. Even if you look at someone like Anna Netrebko, who paid for her way through conservatory by cleaning the floors and, cleaning toilets and being that kind of person, and sitting and listening and watching other people sing, and like being at a theater, or like Maria Callas, sitting and listening to every singer in her studio. Everybody's Genesis story is really fundamentally the same. There are very few shortcuts in this career. Yeah. And the people that have shortcuts, I haven't seen those shortcuts have long longevity. Yeah. There's a need for consistency. And, someone always says, there was someone who quote a phrase, a breakout performance is 10 years in the making. A star being born happened a decade ago, and has been happening slowly but surely. So when people say like, "Oh, you weren't there, and then one day you were just a star," it's not true. Mm-hmm. I mean, even if you look at someone like Priti Yende, who is by most people's standards was what people would consider like a crazy breakout star. yes, to the rest of the world when she won Belvedere and she won almost every competition she entered. But for us in South Africa,
No.
you know how hard she works.
Yeah.
We knew the decades of hard work
Yeah.
that have mounted up to the star that was born.
Absolutely.
And I think it's important to know that. And so that's what being at Juilliard did for me. It helped me to realize that everybody has to start somewhere, and nowhere starting anywhere is not wrong. So you can start at the tip of Africa without an idea of what opera is.
Yeah.
And you can still find your way working in Germany, in Austria. You can start, at the bottom of Spain, and you can find your way to America. You can start in Brazil and find your way all the way to the Bolshoi, because it's a question of how consistently you want to work at it and how consequent you want to be with the work that you put in.
Yeah,
that's the thing.
After graduating in Juilliard, after graduating in Juilliard, what you moved to Germany? How did you end up in the most important opera house in Germany, Bayerische Staatsoper? If you can tell us a little bit more about your journey in Germany from New York to Germany.
How I got to the Bayerische Staatsoper was quite a funny story. It was the final year of my degree at Juilliard, and so everybody's auditioning and you're applying. Everyone tells you you've got to apply for young artist programs or fest contracts or find an agent. And I didn't feel ready to find an agent. I was like, oh God, no, I don't think I can. And I felt what I had learned at Juilliard and what I had learned in South Africa. So what I had learned in South Africa was to find my voice and to be very strong in who and what my voice is. Mm-hmm. At Juilliard, what I learned was how to give my voice space to play. And then when I say space to play, it's how to be dramatic and to make dramatic choices with my vocalism, with my acting, like actually how to be an actor, to be a completely rounded artist. But when you learn all those things, you still need somewhere to try it out. So in my brain, what I was thinking is I need a place where I can test out some of the theories that I've learned at Juilliard and the theories that I've learned in South Africa. And I need a proving ground where I can try things out to really start to figure out, this is who I am as an artist. This is the GOLDA SCHULTZ package. And so I decided I wanted to do young artist programs. And I decided I was going to apply to like 6 of them. And, as one does, you apply to thousands and you hope that someone gives you an audition. And I was in the process of actually applying to the Staatsoper in Munich when I got an email from the head of the vocal arts department, Brian Zieger at Juilliard. And he was at the time also the head of the Lindemann program at the Metropolitan Opera. And the Bayerische Staatsoper had sent over the head of their opera studio to listen to some of the singers from the opera studio at Lindemann, just to see if maybe they might be able to give them some work in Europe. And on this morning, while I was sitting doing my student job, this email comes through to me that says, Golda, someone's pulled out of their audition. They're not feeling well. The audition slot is in 40 minutes. Do you want it? And we're just going, well, I get off work and like the next 30 minutes, that gives me 10 minutes to pick up my stuff and run across to the Met. And I was like, sure, I'll do it. And so I asked my boss from my student job, please let me out of my job actually 10 minutes early. So instead of 10 minutes, I had 20, so they could at least like try to warm up. And I had my little audition outfit, put it on, ran across the street in my winter jacket and my boots, and like had my shoes in my hand, had my sheet music ready, put my shoes on just before I got there. And they were like, oh, they're running a little late. And I was like, oh, great, I've got like 5 extra minutes. Let me wipe the sweat from my face. And I remember I walked into List Hall where they had the audition, which is the chorus rehearsal room. And I'm walking down the stairs, tuck, 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 tuck. And I'm passing the guy from the opera studio, and I'm like, hello, thank you so much for taking time to see me. And he was like, oh yeah, it's lovely to meet you. And then he thought I was still the other person. I was like, oh no, she's sick, so I've taken over her slot. I hope that it's okay. And he was like, well, let's see. If it's a bad audition, then it's not okay. And I was like, oh, great, yay. And I remember I had my glasses on, and one of the people always say, don't sing with your glasses on if you're a woman. And so I remember, because I have really bad eyesight, so I can't see very far. And I remembered I'd given my sheet music, and I was like, hi, my name's GOLDA SCHULTZ, and I'd like to start with Kill Bell Sonia from La Rondine. And he's like, oh, lovely. And the reason I also do it is because that intro gives me a chance to just breathe, because this is lovely, like piano. Brum, 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 brum. So I was like, so as that's busy, as the pianist like looks at me, and I was like, yes, you can begin. I like standing there, and she starts playing, and I realized I can see all the way to the back of the room. Oh my God, I'm still wearing my glasses. And as the piano is playing, I'm just like, glasses off. And started singing. And I still remember the guy from the opera studio said that was the most hilarious thing that he had ever seen, because it was done with such flair. I was just like, I'm about to tell a story.
Awesome.
And I remember they took a DVD, so he made a video recording of that. And then I never heard anything. Like, it was November, and then I didn't hear anything. And I still went to London, and I auditioned for the J.T. Parker, got to the final round, and I totally messed up the final round. I cracked up in my aria on stage singing in front of Tony Papano. I think it has to have been the worst audition that I have ever done in my life. I had to start the aria all over again, because I was like, it was terrible, because I was so nervous. And so I didn't get into that. Yay. And then February comes, and I get an email from Brian Ziegler again saying, so the people from the Bayerische Staatsoper would like to know if you could come to Munich to sing a live audition for the head of the opera house. And I said, that'd be really great, but I don't have any more money for flights and visas. And so he said, so then the opera company wrote back and said, we'll pay for your flight ticket if you pay for your visa. We'll get you here. You just have to find a place to stay and pay for your visa. But all we can do is pay for your flight ticket. And so I was like, well, the flight ticket's the most expensive part. So yeah, sure, let's do that. So I had to get a visa. And then I remember I had an Irish friend who knew an Irish girl who had been in the opera studio, who was still in the ensemble, Tara Erot. And my friend Naomi O'Connell said, I'm going to email my friend Tara, and you're going to sleep on Tara's couch. And I was like, oh, yes, sure, I'll sleep on a stranger's couch, whatever. And I remember arriving in Munich and just being so dazed and confused, because one, it's a European city. You're having to speak German to people with my limited German that I had, and I was trying to have German conversations with people. And then I had to sing my audition for the head of the opera company and the casting director and the head of the opera studio. And I sang my audition. I did my 2 arias, and I said, thank you very much for your time. And that same day, after they spoke for like 20 minutes, all of them together. And then I remember the head of the opera studio said, oh, could you just come with me to my office? And I was like, it's really fine. If I sucked, you guys can just say it.
Tell me.
Like, we don't have to do the whole. And I remember I said this, like, I was in the elevator with this man. I was like, it's really fine. Like, I totally understand. Like, if I didn't get in, like, we don't have to do the whole thing. Like, I'm okay. Like, thanks for the free holiday for like a week in Bavaria. It's been great. I really appreciate like all the effort you guys made. Like, no hard feelings. And he was like, would you please sit down? And I was like, yeah, but if it's just going to be we don't want you, like, it's just easier if I just go. And he's like, we're trying to tell you that we want you to be in the opera studio. Do you always talk this much? And I was like, well, yes, when I'm nervous. And so that's how I got into the opera studio. And it's just kind of been like that since then. Like, every time I have an audition, and if it goes well, I usually end up talking a lot after auditions. Yeah. Even now, I'm talking a lot, as you can hear, because I get so nervous about like awkward silences that I'm just like, oh God, they must hate me. So I'll just talk, keep talking until someone says, get out, that's how I did that. And then they were like, no, we want you to stay. But and then I remember he still said, but if you don't want to be here, that's also an option. And I was like, no, I want to be here. And I thought I was such an idiot. I played my cards so badly because I just said to him, oh, no, I want to be here. No one else wants me. So yeah. And I just remember him looking at me like, wow, this one just
TMI.
no filter. That's how I got into Munich, and I think they still regret that decision to this day.
No, I don't.
No, I don't think so.
No.
Sunny boy, we said the same.
No.
But Golda, there you had the wonderful opportunity to perform some things on stage and learn a lot of stuff. But also, I remember from our discussion, you had a very wise strategy in terms of finding your agent. So you said, I'm not going to finish from here without getting the right management that works for me. So how did you do this?
Oh gosh, I think that a lot of times people don't realize that as a young singer, as much as other people are in control of your career, it has to be led from you. So the people you associate with, it has to be an active choice. If you're just associating with people just because they're the ones who are coming to you, a lot of your career is not going to be within your control. And that also means that the end of your career won't be in your control because other people will tell you when it's over. And I've always thought to myself, I choose when I leave a party. Like I make sure that people want to invite me, but I choose when I leave. So I've got to set my life up so that I can choose what I do. And so I got into the opera studio and I remembered I got into the opera studio and my goal after the 2 years of being in the opera studio was I want an agent, because if I don't get into the ensemble in Munich, I will have to do freelance work. So I need to be ready for whatever options open up. And so in every opera studio, they're always letting agents listen to you. But very, very few times does that actually lead to you getting an agent. So I was doing all these singing auditions and singing really well, at least that's what I thought. And people seemed to like me, but nobody was saying, oh, we'd love to have you on our roster. I sang a lot for people from IMG. I sang for a lot of people from Cami. I sang for so many agents, and nobody actually seemed to want to sign me. And so I thought to myself, well, if nobody wants to sign me, then this means that GOLDA SCHULTZ is going back to South Africa very soon. Because that was also my thinking. Like, if I don't get an agent and I don't get an ensemble job, then I got to go back to South Africa and I've got to use my contacts to get into journalism. And then we know that this situation is done. And so I decided, I sat down and I was like, well, what's the best way to get ahead in anything? You need capital. So capital implies either you need financial capital so that you can sustain yourself while you're busy looking for something, or you can build your own brand in that way, or you need social capital. And social capital implies that people like you. People like you enough to invest their name in honor of you getting an opportunity. So people like you enough to risk their own reputation for you to get ahead. And so I realized I don't have financial capital. That's plain to see. I'm an opera studio member. We don't make a lot of money. But I do have social capital. At least I think I have social capital. I've worked really hard in this opera house. All the roles that I've done, everybody's told me that I've acted extremely professionally. The theater's always given me more responsibility every time I've stepped on stage. So that means that they think I'm good at this. So I asked for an appointment with the actual head of the opera house. And I know a lot of people think that when you're a young singer, you don't in the same league to be able to talk to management, but that's not the case because you're all in the same industry and they're the ones who are making these kinds of decisions. And what's really interesting is management people respond well to employees who have an idea of what they can offer so that you help management decide where your career is going to go. So I went to the head of the opera house, Herr Bachler, Niklas Bachler, and I said to him, I'd love to have a meeting with you, talk about my career. And he said, all right, well, what do you want to know? And I said, well, the first question, I said, I have basically two questions. I said, one, do you think I'm talented enough to have a career in this business? And then he said, well, I wouldn't keep you in this opera studio if I didn't think you had the potential to have a career. And I said, well, that's great. And I said, the second question is related to the first question. So I'm glad you answered that positively. Because the second question is, would you be willing to stake your reputation on me getting a career? And he said, how would you like me to stake my reputation? I said, I need you to write to the agents that you think could be the best to represent me and tell them that they're idiots for not being my manager. And that's what he did. He risked his reputation and he wrote to like 3 agents that he thought would be a good fit for me. And 2 of those agents wrote back to me and said, well, Bachler says we should talk to you. He said they've sent us some clips of you and we'd love to be in conversation. I was like, excellent. And that's how I got my manager. I got my manager because somebody staked their reputation on me. And I sang an audition for her. I sang an audition for her assistant, actually. And he and I had such a great rapport. He went to the head of the vocal arts division at Harrison Parrott, who are still my agents to this day, and he staked his reputation. I remember that my current manager, Shirley Thompson, she called me and she said she had never heard him talk about a singer the way he had talked about me. He was excited. He was determined that they needed to sign me, and that usually what happens is the way that it usually happens is the assistants will listen to someone. They'll suggest that the head of the vocal division listens to them again, and then they decide to offer. But she signed me without having heard me herself because he believed in me so much. He staked his reputation on me, and that's how she signed me. And when you know that, what's so important about that story is that what you have to understand about an agent is that is a person who will spend the majority of their career staking their reputation on you. So it matters. It matters that they believe in you because that's the agent that you want. You want an agent who is going to be your biggest fan and your fiercest gladiator in a room. And the only way that they're willing to do, they have to stake their life, their bread and butter on you being able to do something. So that's what I mean. That's what I did. I used the social capital that I had around me, and that's how I got to where I am, I suppose.
Awesome.
If I may, you had also guts, Golda, not just social capital. And at this point, I would like to hear Eugenia's beautiful voice. She has been silent up to now, but now, Eugenia, it's time for your question.
Yeah, so
the 360 of opera question.
Yes, so some of the questions I had, we already covered. You know, it was about your career and your identity and how that helped you. So I think I would like to jump actually to your work with Opera for Peace. And if you can tell us a little bit, like as an ambassador, what you've been doing with them, what's coming up, and talk about this idea of the social responsibility of the artist.
So how I got in touch with Opera for Peace, the foundation started basically as a platform for social change and the social movement. And that started, I think, in 2019, they began. And they had, at first they asked me, you know, would you like to be an ambassador? And I said, well, what am I going to be an ambassador for? What does this all mean? And then what they told me, which was really so fascinating, is that we're trying to create a space where you as an artist can use your art to push your own social and political agenda, because we are all political beings, unfortunately. What I always tell people is, you know, if you think that politics is not going to affect you, you're very wrong. Politics is an extremely personal thing, and I think people of color are very well aware of that. People from colonial Africa, we're extremely aware of how personal politics can get. So what Opera for Peace has done is they've given me a platform to really think about what are the things that are important to me as a person, and how do I think that opera can help to bring about some sort of change in that way. So what's important to me as a person is being able to see other people who look like me on stage, not just on stage, but in the rehearsal room, in the orchestra pit, in administration. That's what's important to me, because if there are people who look like me in those positions that make decisions, it means that it becomes less likely that racial bias can really have such a grip, and that sizist bias can have a grip in our industry. So what Opera for Peace has done, it's been helped me to understand what my actual work has been able to do, that I've actually been doing it for such a long time. By merely existing, I've been an activist. It's a very strange thing to think of yourself in that way, but because there are so few singers of color that are represented in the media, and so few, and like, let's not even get us started on musicians and instrumentalists of color and people who look different, and this side of white. And so that's been the main thing. So when I've been working with Opera for Peace, what I've been trying to do is, I work predominantly in South Africa, and what I do is, whenever I'm there, they help me to set up masterclasses where I get to talk to young singers trying to enter the industry about how they can have access. What I then also do is, whenever I'm in, what the organization has also done is, it also gives me kind of the backing that I need to be able to speak to theaters and to administrators in theaters with the backing of the movement and the organization, because they can set up meetings and they can start to prime people for the conversations that I think are necessary to have. So it's twofold how I'm using the platform and how that I'm being an ambassador for them. Right now, the next thing that I'm trying to do is, I'm currently working with a former colleague of mine in South Africa to work on how we can, because what we've noticed is, like, even this, lots of people are having education happen online. But what's problematic in the South African context of online learning is that Wi-Fi is problematic. Data packages are problematic. So people don't have access to free internet. So even though this is a great platform, the chances of it being able to reach a South African audience are quite limited, unless they have live in a really good area, have a really make a good living, and can have open Wi-Fi in their home. Lots of South African families live on data packages with very limited data allotted to live streams. So that's impossible for them to even watch. So that kind of thinking is that, well, so my friend and I, we're trying to figure out how we can bridge the gap that is the lack of data, to allow people in South Africa, especially young musicians, access to information that could help them in building their career even further. So if we could help them with learning how to manage online sites, to better use streaming platforms, so they can then upload their own content and therefore try to make a living that way. That's another way that we can help them to build the industry in South Africa. So that's how I've been working with Opera for Peace, and it's been a really educational experience for me, because once they asked me, what does Opera for Peace mean to me, I really went back through my whole career, which has not been long, and I realized that there are a lot of choices that I've made for what seemed to me, basic logical choices to make. But when you look at it in the grander scheme of things, it's actually been a very socially responsible choice to make, and a politically aware choice to make. Very early on, I said I didn't want to sing Porgy and Bess right at the beginning of my career. It was really important for me that I sing ingenue roles like Sophie, like Pamina, even a role like Contessa in Notte di Figaro. These roles that are quintessentially considered white skinny girl roles, if you want to put it that way. And the reason it was important to me is because I want to make sure that young girls of color can see themselves in these stories. Because if you can see yourself in a character's story, you can relate. And therefore, if you ever think of a career choice and you've seen someone who looks like you do that job, you're more likely to think of it as an option. Like, even right now, little girls of color are looking at Kamala Harris and thinking, I could be vice president of the United States. The same way that little children of color looked at Obama and said, I could be president. It's exactly that. We need representation, because representation sparks imagination. When imagination is sparked, social change can actually happen. Because if you start focusing on individual moments like that, individual metrics, that can really spark real change, because that is a change that is driven internally from the individual out, based on the inspiration they've received. So that's how I've been working with Opera for Peace, and I'm really excited. I'm really excited with everything that it is potentially opening up even further, even more.
Oh,
Wonderful.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful.
Wonderful.
Also, I just want to add, Golda, that I really admire Opera for Peace. We've had a chat with Yulia as well. Wonderful people, and their job is really amazing, really out of the world. And for you to go out there to just fight the fight that will never end, it means a lot, honestly speaking, because when you talk about roles, as a black tenor, it's always a struggle. They don't see me as a Don Ottavio, they don't see me as Nemorino, just because I'm black. But how do you then fight that nicely? And I think what Opera for Peace is doing, it's just fantastic, really. And I encourage you guys to really, we are behind you, and we will fight a silent fight behind you.
I think that's the important thing. Like, I was talking to a colleague of mine a couple of months ago, and we were talking about what it means to be an activist. And what I have learned from the South African struggle through apartheid is that evil or just intolerance and evil, if you want to call it that, but just this blanket wall of no cannot always be confronted with a fist.
Exactly.
Sometimes you have to go under the wall, around the wall, over the wall. You can't always come at something with a battering ram. So what I mean by that, in terms of how we need to come about with our move for social diversity and for racial diversity within classical arts, is that it's not always a loud screaming match. Sometimes it is just having one conversation with one person consistently and working on that one person to start changing how they see things. So when you're talking about roles, it was so like, as much as, and I can tell you right now, I got so many no's. When I first wanted to sing Sophie, so many people said no to me. They were like, oh, but your voice, it's more of a Marshallin, and like your look is more of a Marshallin. And I was like, what's that supposed to mean? Like, because I got boobs and a butt, like that makes me a Marshallin? And I remembered, I just kept saying no. I think, and I said to him, the last time people saw a Sophie of color was probably Roberta Alexander or Barbara Hendricks. And I was like, that was in the 90s, people. In the 90s. We need, and including Kathleen Battle. And then like knowing that Kathleen Battle was like the quintessential Sophie for a long time, compared to like all the Lucia Pops and every other white woman who has sung Sophie. I'm like, we can't just have those 2-3 women from like 20 years ago be the only ones that are there. People need a new example. And so I kept fighting to be able to sing that role. And like, I'm really glad that I've done it. I've never been overtly in people's face about it. I've just quietly said, no, thank you. No, thank you.
Yeah.
Because there's a thing that when I was telling you about how to choose an agent, what's important to know is, this was something my singing teacher taught me, your career is not made up by the things you say yes to. Your career is made up by the things you say no to. And that's also true of life. The life you lead is made up by the things you say no to, not by the things you say yes to. So make sure that you are considerate. Make sure that you are thoughtful, because this will mean something at the end of your days. So even if I don't have a career that is in the scope of Renee Fleming or in the scope and realm of Maria Callas, if all I am is just as good as I am today, I will be very, very proud of the choices that I've made. Because the choices I have made have come from me being a thoughtful human being and a conscientious human being, and in that way being an activist.
Yeah, amazing. So, also, Golda, I mean, just to add, I enjoyed the La Clemenza di Tito in Zalspec that you did.
Thank Thank you.
That was just a revelation. You know, when you did in Amsterdam, I was doing Le Conte of Man, and they were planning to do it at the Deutsche Oper, and they asked me to audition if I want to try it. And I was just like, absolutely yes. And so I'm trying to say the work that you're doing is already, you know, being instilled. It's coming up. There's a change happening, even though people like me, you know, I am very. I keep on. I'm like nearly, you know, there are so many people who don't see me as certain roles, but I keep on saying, just give me that opportunity and then see what happens.
Exactly.
And I think it's just, we just have to have courage to say, just give me one chance. And if it doesn't work, give it to somebody else. And this is what I've been doing. And now I'm trying different roles just for the sake of showing them that I'm not only one ponytail, you know, I can do so many things. And this is what we young singers have to also give out there, give the energy of saying, I am not just the Rossini chicken. I'm just something else as well, you know. I don't want to say it like that, but
I'm not a Rossini chicken. I'm a Strauss sausage. Yeah.
Exactly. And at the end of the day, I also believe that it is always about beautiful voices. It's about how the singer portrays the character. It's the feeling. We all have beautiful voices. Sorry, there are singers who have perfect technique technically, but they can't give emotions. For me, I don't care whether you have a beautiful voice or what. I know I don't have, but once you put me on stage, I will show you every feeling. It might not be perfect, but I will show you every feeling that I want to get out you there. I will at least touch one or two people. That's my mission.
Absolutely.
We have to have that courage. Yeah.
I think this idea of having the ability to showing all these emotions and these feelings on stage also comes from what Golda was saying of how you're leading your life, you know, and if your social responsibility and what's your message beyond the notes on the page, right? What's your message as an artist, as a human being, and that translates in your artistry once you're on stage.
It has to, because I don't think we don't create art in a vacuum. And I think that's one of the most important things that I always tell young singers is don't think that this that you're doing is just like in the practice room and only on stage. It is influenced by your life experience, and it will influence how you engage with other people. I remember I did Nanetta at the Met, and I remembered it was this beautiful production done in set in the 50s, and you know the Nanetta is in this cute little pedal pusher outfit, and I just remember thinking to myself, I am not the girl for that show. I am not that skinny girl jumping around with my pedal pushers on. And I remember, it was so interesting. I remember my mom saying, she says to me, but why aren't you? You can sing it, can't you? And I said, well, of course I can sing it. There's no problem. I'm like, it's notes on a page. I can sing notes on a page. But I said, but it's the playing of this girl. And she said, and then as I thought, and she asked me to think about why it was such a problem for me to play that role. And it became very clear to me that it had to do with my insecurity as a big girl. That when I was a teenager, no boys were flirting with me or looking at me. And they were all going for these beautiful skinny girls. And I had built up a complex that I couldn't be a pretty young thing. And then the first time that I had seen a big girl win a cute boy was watching, Hairspray and watching Stacey get the cute boy at the end of the show. And I just remember thinking well, if she can get Zac Efron, I can get someone like Zac Efron. And that was the thing that got me. I was in my 20s when I saw that, and it had such an impact on me. And I thought to myself, well, if that happened to me when I just watched a movie, imagine if someone comes to an opera and a girl of color sees herself getting a cute boy, or a big chubby teenage girl sees someone who looks like her, who reminds her of herself, being happy in her body. And as much as I feel awkward and completely conspicuous and out of my depth in this moment, if it helps someone else feel brave and feel like they can, then I will endure this hour and a half of being uncomfortable so someone else can be braver in their life. And so that's what I did. So that's also how I've done things. It's sometimes I have to do the thing that scares me, because I know that if I do that, someone else might feel brave in their actual life. And for me, it's just an hour of my day, but for them, it's a lifetime of change.
Yep. Yes.
Golda, amazing. I mean, like, we have so many questions for you, but I'm just gonna go to the last question. I can talk.
I have to
I'm
leave,
so sorry,
guys.
Eugenia.
No, I want to please keep going. I want to
Sure.
thank you so much, Golda, for all, I mean, your story and just all such inspiring message that you have, and thank you for being with us today. Thank you guys for having me, and please keep going. I'll just scoot out.
Thank you so much, Eugenia. We love you. Thank you so much for your time as well.
Thank you,
Thank you
guys.
so much.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Bye.
Eugenia.
Thank you.
Eugenia, thank also 360 of Opera for their entire support with Prelude in this interview.
Of course, it's
Have
our
a wonderful
pleasure.
day.
Thank you.
Have a
Bye,
wonderful
guys.
day. Ciao, ciao.
Bye.
So the three musketeers
The
stayed
three
here.
musketeers. Actually, Golda, before we go to the last question, I want to speak about repertoire, because we have so many young singers. You know, this is the most important part you didn't touch, since we're not in a hurry. Now, I want to ask you about repertoire. Did you always know what repertoire you wanted to sing? Did you ever have a struggle? What is your advice to the young singers?
Oh, I think at the beginning of my career, I just really sang whatever I liked. I know that sounds really, really ridiculous, but I feel that what I was trying to make sure for myself is I was trying to build up a love for the repertoire in general. So I was just singing things that I liked at the beginning, and I wasn't trying to say, I'm a Rossini coloratura, I sing only bel canto, I sing only Mozart, I sing only, you know, like, I remember there were so many people at college with us that would just be like, I only sing Puccini.
That's so true.
I'm a Verismo, that's all I sing. And I was like, that's very limited. If that's all you sing, like, you're just gonna sing Mimis and Rodolfos, and that'll be it.
Yeah.
I don't think I could do a career of, but I also know that for me as a person, I get bored really quickly if I just do one thing. Like, so I tried everything. I tried a little bit of Handel, and I figured out, I can do Handel, but I don't like Handel, so I will sing Handel if I have to. If somebody says to me like, this is the only way you're getting paid, I'll be like, okay, I'll do it. And then I tried some Puccini, and I love Puccini and I love Verdi. But at the same time, I also had realized, like, but when you're starting out, the best thing to do is to not push your voice too far, too fast. Because one, then it means that you're stuck singing a specific kind of repertoire for the rest of your career, which was, like I said, going to be really boring real quick.
Yeah.
And two, could also potentially send you into vocal distress way earlier in your career than you really need to be. So I tried the Puccinis, and I do enjoy Puccini, and I tried some Verdi, and I do enjoy Verdi, and I tried some bel canto, and I don't really enjoy bel canto. All my secrets are coming out now. It's like, I feel so bad.
It's okay.
Thank you. And then I but what I found is but I also know that everybody's voice has a natural leaning. So like you said, your voice naturally lent itself to Rossini. So for you, that's going to be how you make sure that your voice is healthy. If you can sing Rossini well, then Sunny Boy's voice is tip-top shape. For me, my voice naturally leans to Mozart. So I know that if I'm singing Mozart well, my voice is healthy. The day that I can't sing Mozart well is either it's because I haven't been singing enough and haven't been practicing properly, or I've been doing too much of other stuff and I've forgotten the fundamentals of what makes my voice what it is. So then I know I've got to go back to the Mozart and work from there. So I think every voice has where it leans. Some people lean on Wagner. Their voice is just you look at someone like Lisa Davidson. Of course she's going to sing Wagner. But that doesn't mean that she shouldn't sing Schubert Lieder to make sure that she can keep the pianissimi and the innigness of her voice where it needs to be. And it doesn't mean that she shouldn't be singing things where she can express the other side of her voice, the quiet and the smallness of her voice. I mean, even Birgit Nilsson, Wagnerian soprano of note, she sang Donna Anna's and Queen of the Nights to warm up. So I think in terms of that, that's how I think about repertoire. It has to be when you're thinking of repertoire, it shouldn't just be you thinking, oh, what sounds good in my voice?
Yeah.
That's not the first question. The first question I always I ask people is, what's the stuff that excites you? Because if it excites you, that means you'll be driven to work at it. If you're driven to work at it, you will become proficient. If you become proficient, you will become excellent. And if you become excellent, you will have a career.
Yes, so
kind
true.
of like it builds up. It's just like, it's kind of fundamentals. It's the fundamentals of success. Be excited about what you're doing, because when you're excited, you're willing to put in the hours that you need to put in. Because like for anybody to be proficient at anything, you need about 10,000 hours.
Yes, so true.
So, you know, like, guys, we've done 10,000 hours of the singing thing, like at least 10,000 hours, maybe like 9,500. But to be proficient at something, you need 10,000 hours. And the only way you're ever going to get to 10,000 hours is you got to have like some excitement, some fire burning that's going to like get you there and beyond to excellence, you know? So that's how I think in terms of repertoire. I think it's got to be stuff that excites you. Your voice has to lean toward it, and it's got to keep your voice healthy.
Absolutely.
That's the repertoire you start with.
Yeah.
And then to be an artist, not to be a singer, to be an artist, you gotta try everything out. You gotta sing a little bit of this and taste a little. You gotta taste a little bit of that Wagner. You gotta like pull from that. You gotta scoop some Schubert into your life. You gotta like drink from the cup that is Strauss. And you gotta like and bathe. And well, maybe not bathe. Like maybe like a glass of champagne that is bel canto and just sip slowly.
Exactly.
You know, but you have
Golda,
to like do that. No, sorry, Maria.
Golda, how excited you were to do competitions or not? Did you like competitions?
Why do you ask me such horrible questions, Maria? I was not a competition person. I did not get that South African gene of doing well at competitions. I feel like there are so many South African singers who've done so well at competition level. I
Not
just
me.
didn't. So Sunny Boy and we did not do well at competitions.
No.
For me, competitions, it takes a specific kind of person, because a competition it's like being at the Olympics. It's very concentrated, and you have to be so focused, and you have to like work your routine. And I, as much as I work routine, I do like, it's so overwhelming, that stress. And I just couldn't figure a way. Maybe now that I'm older, I could potentially do really well in competitions because I've worked out what works for me and what doesn't.
Yeah.
But I'm now too old to sing competitions, you know, that's just the luck of the draw. But I think when I was younger, it was all extremely stressful. It's an extremely stressful experience because you're all singing for this panel, and majority of people are singing like these firework arias, and you're all listening to each other, and you only have like 15 minutes to warm up with the pianist, and then you're on stage and you have to be switched on at all times. And I found that to be extremely daunting and extremely emotionally exhausting for me. I did 2 competitions. Sunny Boy was in competitions that I was in Verona.
In Verona with the big
Eva
Marton.
Marton. Oh my gosh. She hated me so much. She's like, I think the thing that she said about me is that I was the tiniest voice liu that she'd ever heard, and there was no way that I would have a career singing liu. And I was like, oh, okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your time.
She was quite hard. She was very hard. So many singers, but I was lucky she liked it.
And so that was the one competition. So I didn't do well in that competition. I was out after the first round, and then I had like 4 days just to hang around in Verona, which I enjoyed, just like hanging out in Italy. And then the other competition that I did was in Spain, and I got to the final round and I came 3rd, which is not bad. I think that's not really bad at all. But I think that there's something very important about competitions that everybody has to understand. Not everybody's going to win. So your goal sometimes your goal shouldn't always be, I need to win this competition. For some people, absolutely, that's just how they function, and congratulations. But if my goal when I went in, I think it's important to have goals that are adjacent to wanting to win a competition. So if it is for you to be able to, I remember Pretty always said for her, it wasn't about winning competitions. For her, this was the cheapest and easiest way that she could sing in front of casting directors and get the most bang for her buck. That's how Pretty sang for competitions. She took it as like a mass audition. Like I'm just singing for all these casting directors and I'm singing my aria package for them, and then hopefully someone will hire me. And because she had that kind of bravado, she won, and that's impressive. Like I think what's necessary is having adjacent goals when you're in a competition. What I wanted to do, I remember with that competition where I came third, I just remember because I had paid for that flight myself, and it was one of those competitions where the only way that you got like your hotel paid for and your flight money back was if you made it to the final round.
To the next level.
Right.
I just remembered to myself, I was like, I have used up all my savings for this experience. They need to pay me back. So I don't need to win. I just need my flight to my hotels paid. That's all I need. And then I got to the final, so that was paid. And then I got like an extra €1,000, which was just like, I was so excited. I was like, I've won €1,000.
Wasn't bad.
That was not a bad way.
Wasn't bad at all. But actually, you mean that somebody has to recognize if he's capable of doing that well, because he or she may be able to do something else well. So there is the same door to get to this job for everybody. There are different doors for different people.
Absolutely. I think some people's way is through the front door, other people's way is through the side window. If you want to be in this career, you find your way in, and you use the gifts and talents that you have to make yourself indispensable to the people that are the gatekeepers of this industry. And for me, the way I came into this industry was going the school route. For me, I didn't, and maybe it's because I didn't trust myself enough all the way from South Africa to go straight to Germany. That's why I went to America. But it's not like that route was any easier. I chose the most difficult school to get into, and I was I'm just going to go. And like sometimes you also have to have this sense of like, it is what it is. I'm just going to try. And it can't mean so much if it doesn't succeed. There might be another way in. If you don't get into that school, maybe there's another school. Maybe there's a different teacher that you're supposed to be working with. Like I went from Juilliard and then to Munich. And then like once I got into the opera studio in Munich, people would think like, oh, now your career's set. But that's not how it happened for me. I went from Munich, one of the best opera houses in all of Germany, and I went for 1 year to the south of Austria, to one of the smallest theaters in the south of Austria, to go and work there for a year because nobody else was hiring me. So my mom's always said to me, she was like, you go where people want you. Don't stay where people don't want you. Go where people are inviting you and giving you opportunities that will improve you, not just keep you employed. The opportunities must consistently improve you. So go there. Even if it looks like the most ridiculous move to somebody out from the outside. For a lot of people, I remember so many of my colleagues going, but you're going all the way from the opera studio in Munich to this tiny theater. Like, why don't you audition for a fest job in Berlin or in Hamburg? And I was like, well, why should I when they've offered me roles I want to sing and it's a year-long contract? Like, then I can still go and audition at those places, but I can go with like really good roles under my belt. Like, I feel like this would be a better idea, And then I had just signed that contract, and Munich then said, oh, we know that you've got this year-long contract, but we want you to come back the year after that and be in the ensemble here. I was like, oh, wow. Great. Go where people want you. Go where people want you. Go where people will give you the opportunities that will improve you and make you better at your craft. That's what you do. Don't go somewhere just because you're trying to. I know it sounds so counterproductive, but like, don't go somewhere just because you're trying to stay in the scene.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
The scene is not what matters, because the scene changes. The trends change all the time.
Yeah.
What does not change, the only thing that you can control, you cannot control the scene. You cannot control people's tastes. You can control your creative output. So make sure that your creative output is strong, comes from a place of confidence, and comes from a place of absolute, self-assuredness. Do that, because that will withstand the trends. That will always withstand the trends, because it's coming from you. Work
Golda,
on you.
Golda, since you mentioned the years in the ensemble, you had the experience to work both in the ensemble and as a freelancer. What do you prefer and why?
Oh no, that's not easy. I love both of them. I like the freedom. I think it's really tough to say, oh, I love being a freelancer and I hate being on ensemble, because I loved being in the ensemble. I love the sense of community. I loved the free coachings. Oh, that was nice. Didn't have to pay for coaching. But what I also love about freelance life is I control my calendar more so, and I really control the creative output. So when you're in ensemble, especially for those people who don't know the different levels of houses, ABC here in Germany. So if you're in an A house, the majority of the time there are a lot of guests coming through who sing the main roles. And then sometimes people in the ensemble, we will sing primary roles, but we'll also most of the time we sing comprimario roles. It's just the second string. But the Munich, and then in the B houses, the majority of people in the fest, they sing all the lead roles.
Yeah.
Like Sunny Boy is like singing lead roles all the time.
Oh no, please no.
I would be like singing Fior di Legge one night, and then the next night I'd be singing Parsifal, Blumenmädchen, Gruppe 2, Zweites Mädchen. That would be me,
Yeah.
And then the next day you're singing Stimme von dem Himmel in Don Carlos, and no one ever sees your face. And
exactly.
Night you're just like, you're always doing something. So in terms of learning a multitude of repertoire, Fest is amazing that way. And it really teaches you how to balance art with work.
Yes.
Because when you're at conservatory, the teachers love to talk about the art of singing and the art of opera and the art of the creative process. But what they forget to remind you is that it's also a job, and that you don't necessarily have all the time in the world to figure out what every line and phrase means. And sometimes you just need to get it done, and having work output that's at like 75% also needs to be okay. And you need to be okay with that. So what I learned in Fest was how to be okay with balancing when I just needed to work and when I was making art and when it was important and when I had to find a balance where they come together. That was really good. What's been really fun for me about being a freelancer is that I can really just focus on the music that really gives me joy and that excites me. And I really can choose and say, you know what? I don't want to sing that concert. I know it's with a great conductor and it's a wonderful orchestra, but that's not repertoire that excites me. If they want to have a repertoire discussion and maybe change the repertoire, then I'd love to do it. Getting for me, I remember my first season of freelance, the first thing that I did on my first contract as a freelancer when I was out of the ensemble, I had sung my last performance in the ensemble was Parsifal, Blumenmädchen, Gruppe 1, Blumenmädchen, number 1. I finally got to the top of the line. I ended on a high note. I sang Parsifal with Jonas Kaufmann as our Parsifal, and I was like, yes, what a way to end my ensemble career. And the next, 6 weeks after that, after the summer break, my first job as a full freelancer was then getting to sing Mahler 4 on tour with the Mahler Chamber Orchestra, founded by Claudio, and these people are Mahler specialists. So I'm getting to do Mahler 4 with Mahler specialists. and Gustavo Dudamel's conducting. I was like,
Wow.
you cannot like write this in a movie script.
Yeah.
And then not only was I getting to do that, but I was getting to talk to Gustavo Dudamel about what the phrases were meaning. And I got to make art and also work. And that was when I just knew for myself, being a freelancer is the career that I want right now. And there are so many things that are good about being an ensemble and so many things that are good about being a freelancer. As an ensemble, you have the security of knowing that you have a fixed paycheck every month. And in a time like now, during COVID, that's a blessing. That's a gift.
Yeah.
That's a gift that I'm very, very glad so many of my friends have. It's a gift that I don't have. But the other side of it is I get to sing music that I really, really want to sing. And I get to study the music that I really, really want to study. And it's not because somebody's telling me you have to do this because it's part of your contract.
Yeah.
So there's pluses and minuses to it all. And I think everybody needs to figure out the only way you know if it works for you is you need to know yourself.
Absolutely.
This whole job is about knowing yourself.
Yeah, I can absolutely attest to that, Golda, because I started as a freelancer as well. And then I decided to go to an ensemble just because I wanted to show another side of me, because ensemble was the only place that will make me do other roles that people didn't really realize that I could do them.
Exactly.
And I am so grateful for Hanover that they trusted me and they believe that I can do it, because that's the most important thing. We can talk negatively about all these things, but the German system of being in a house helps a lot. First of all, confident, experience on stage, knowing what to do, knowing what to not do, knowing what your voice can do and what the voice cannot do. Because it is just so pointless to go out there and just sing only Rossini and nothing else. It's just, for me, it's just like I'm getting older. What is next for me? I want to sing Donatava. I want to sing Nemorino. I want to sing this. And nobody believes that I can do these things just because they hear this high notes and this chord. Sometimes high notes is not, singing is not about only high notes. And so I decided to go to an ensemble. And I have been learning a lot. Really, it's been wonderful. And I just love the system. It's just not because of the pandemic as well, just because for the fact that they trust a man of color to sing those roles. You know what I mean? Do you understand? My point?
I mean, that was me too.
Yeah, I always want to give really kudos to all the houses that are giving chances to people of color. It is just something that is wonderful, and we cannot thank enough for that.
I know. And it's so strange, I think, for us from South Africa, because I remember when I did Porgy and Bess at the Met in 2019, so many of my colleagues were just so emotional about the fact that they were standing on the Met stage and they were singers of color and they were singing and they were like, don't you feel like this is such a watershed moment for singers of color in this industry? And I remember I said to them, I was like, not for me, because this is what I started with in South Africa.
Exactly. Yeah.
This is what's happening here. What is special, what is so seemingly special for all of you guys is for me the norm where I come from.
Exactly.
So I think that was that it's so interesting, like seeing that and like knowing that here in Europe, it's such a special thing to be a person of color and having to fight for that space.
Yeah.
And then knowing where you come from, that like, this is so normal for you and me to see people who look like us on stage, actually.
Absolutely.
Like that's the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize when they talk about South, because there's this idea that South African voices, like, and that singers of color from South Africa were some special like unicorns in the opera world. And I just keep telling people, I'm really not. If you would fly with me on the 12-hour flight to Cape Town, you throw a rock and you'll hit like 10 others who sing like me. Like,
exactly.
I'm really like, when I'm home, I'm nothing special. Even in my family, I'm nothing special. Because everyone in my family is like, what? We all sing in tune too. What are you talking about?
Well, Golda, I mean, talking to you, it's really the most wonderful thing. So I'm just going to go to the last question. I
okay,
mean, we've been keeping on and dragging it back. So now it's happening. So Golda, since we are going through this horrible pandemic time, I mean, so many of us have lost contract. I mean, for sure, me and you have lost the most important gig that we're supposed to sing together in New York. I'm so angry. We're supposed to do Beethoven number 9 with you together at the Carnegie Hall in New York, I think.
Yeah.
And it got cancelled. And so what is your word of encouragement to all the artists that are going through these terrible times? Of course, freelancers and young singers who are coming up. What is your advice? And if you would like to share, what are your future plans?
Oh my gosh, what's my advice for everybody going through this pandemic? There's so many things that you can say, but I think the most important thing that I would tell anybody right now is don't forget to take care of your soul and your mind during this time. Because with all these things that are being canceled, what I think a lot of people don't realize is that it takes a toll on your spirit.
Yeah.
Because we're emotional people, musicians, artists are emotional people. We're tuned with our emotions. And then what's happening, as people get to the point where a job is supposed to happen, then it gets canceled. It's like watching hope just keep slipping away from you. Like you keep grabbing it and it's a mirage. Hope is just a mirage. Hope is not a real thing you can hold on to. And what I've found in this time is that I'm really having to work on my mental health and like work on my mental strength and my spiritual strength to stay okay when hope seems to get taken away from me. And that being okay doesn't mean keeping a smile on my face.
Yeah.
Being okay in a time like this is actually means to allow myself the time to grieve loss.
Yeah.
Because so many of us don't grieve loss. Because we're like, oh, well, then like we've got to find another job to do. Find something else to fill the calendar. Because that's how we've all been trained, especially as freelancers. If you lose a job, find a job. Lose a job, find a job. Lose a job, find a job. But because this losing of jobs is so consistently happening and the gaining of jobs isn't really coming, we're all having to sit and have to go through the process of losing.
Yeah.
And that is necessary. That is what I've learned through this pandemic. Processing loss is necessary because if we don't process it, it means that we won't be ready when an actual opportunity comes because you'll be so pent up with stress and tension at the idea that it might get lost as well.
Yeah.
So you can't ever really enjoy because you're always in the space of, well, what if I lose this? What if I lose this? And then it's just another loss. And then my advice to everybody is learn, practice your grief. This is the time to practice how to grieve. This is the time to pray, and it's okay. And it's really okay to be sad, and it's okay to be angry at losing a job. It's okay to be frustrated at losing an opportunity of a debut. It is okay to be angry at what is happening in the world.
Yeah.
It's absolutely okay. I keep telling people that now. I'm like, you're angry about losing a job? That's fine. Be angry. But just make sure that you get to the other side of that. But right now, if that's where you are, that's okay. So I think that's the thing that I would tell everybody. And what am I doing? What's coming up in the future? Who knows? But actually, no, I'm actually currently working on a recital program with my pianist, Jonathan Ware. We planned a program of female composers. So, and then on top of doing a full recital program of just female composers, we also commissioned a new group of songs to be written by a poet, a poetess, and a female composer. And that's been what's been really helping me is the process of working with these two great women on making this new music that hopefully will inspire other young women to want to sing these songs and other pianists to want to try to play this music because there's so many crazy things happening in these new songs. And what's been really exciting has been the process of learning this new repertoire of like female composers and really learning about female composers. I've discovered some new songs that are so beautiful and strong, and we're really excited about putting that together. So that's what's really like getting me excited. And hopefully in June, I will be premiering the world premiere of a new opera written by Erilyn Wallen in London, hopefully. And that's a new opera called Dido's Ghost, which is like the next chapter of the Dido and Aeneas story. But
Oh, wow.
things get very crazy.
Oh, that's awesome.
So
exciting.
I'm
Absolutely
excited about
exciting.
that. And what I've also been doing during this time of not so much singing is I've really been like working in terms of producing new work. So I'm in talks. Like I said, we've commissioned new songs. I'm talking to composers and librettists about how commissioning works. Like, and we're talking about like new ideas for new operas and like things like that. I'm using the quiet time where I'm not singing, and I'm trying to get my creative brain to do something else. And
Awesome.
I'm doing other stuff, and I'm excited, and it's exercising my brain in a whole new way and exercising my creativity in a new way, but also using my journalism writing skills and investigative skills and putting it in with my passion for storytelling and opera and coming up with and like really trying to find the stories that I think are important to be told and how I can be part of making sure that they get told. So that's what I'm doing.
Beautiful.
Thank
I
you.
am extremely proud of you, Golda. Really, you, Pumeza, Pretty, all of you guys, really, the South Africans that are doing so well in Europe, I am more than proud to call myself a South African, because it takes so much courage and hard work to be in the European stage. And you've done so well, and all the best and many, many blessings to you.
Thank you. Thank you guys so much. This has been such a fun conversation.
Yeah.
Well,
All the
I mean,
best, Golda. There is no much to be said because you are so meaningful. You are so full of life and full of creation. You are the perfect example of an artist that is part of the creative process all the time, from the beginning to the end. And that's something amazing to see. It's not something we see every day. So thank you. Thank you for shining your light today and giving inspirations. We received many messages that they thank you, and they say you inspire them in these difficult times. Especially, we need more powerful people like you. And I would say, if I would choose a title for this interview now, Sunny Boy, I think we could choose that there is no impossible dream. It's just a lie. I think for Gold, everything is possible.
Yes.
And for everybody else.
I think everybody, like, I don't think anything's impossible. I think what you have to think is, when you're thinking about like what success looks like, I think everybody's version of success is very different.
It's so different, yes.
And that's absolutely okay.
Yes.
And I think that's so important for every singer. Like, if it is that you just want to sing in ensemble in like Kassel or Karlsruhe, and that's your level of success, yes,
kudos to you.
Kudos. If you want to just like busk on the side of the street and that's your level of success and you do it well, do it.
Exactly.
Like, I don't like, there is no right way to be successful at your life. Like, sorry.
You see, Maria, I'm not the only one who's positive. So you have Golda here.
Absolutely. I have
also just keeping positive and I mean, we're talking about critics being criticized and all this. Sometimes critics are there to lift you up. The negative ones, you take them as a step forward. So positivity, and this is what we received today from Golda, from everybody who's listening there, all our young singers. Really, positivity can take you far. So.
And when it's so genuine, it can go to the stars, I think.
Exactly.
So thank you, Golda. We can't wait to hear you live very soon when the world goes back to normality, to hear you all and all the artists who have been a little bit put aside by this curse. But it's going to be over soon. So good health and have a wonderful week, everyone. See you next Sunday with Lorraine Artist Management here at Prelude with Mr. Tladla and our partners. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you for joining. Thank you again, Golda. Ciao, ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Ciao.